I'm really, really fortunate that I had very special formative years as a kid that made me feel empowered and be comfortable with who I am. And I had parents that always sort of pushed that more. I became, the youngest designer to show in New York Fashion Week. I was on the Oprah Winfrey Show. I always found my own way to meditate or to contemplate. I try to exercise some things. I think you have to push yourself to do that. But the way to do it for me is not necessarily to wake up every morning and have a moment of gratitude. It's about a lifestyle. It's about having a smile on your face. It's about being kind to people. It's about your attitude that makes you, I think, feel grateful for being alive or feel grateful for today.
You've had a lot of success with that brand and Paris Fashion Week. Why has that been discontinued if there was a lot of success there?
I'll be super transparent.
A lot of the people that I've interviewed have there's been some kind of seismic moment in their life and some massive catalyst, and they've gone from here to there. But I think watching you over the years and looking at your career and your life, change doesn't have to be about the big one thing. I think change can be, and more to your story, it's about the passage of time and evolution and growing up and things that happen slowly. And through that journey and through that evolution, there can be all sorts of growth moments, insights, life lessons, etc. And I think why I was keen to get you on is because although we became great friends, you come from a totally different world to me. I'm a British guy with a very traditional conservative family and private school upbringing, British private school upbringing. But, you have this sort of eclectic mixture of international blood heritage, British Columbia, Ibiza, France, studying in Miami, and very liberal and creative parents. And I just think it's been interesting watching you and observing you, how you've possibly kind of drawn on different philosophies and mindsets and ways of doing things, and from the arts and how you think about things. And I suppose that's what I'm really intrigued about, because I've seen how you've evolved and your success as a fashion designer. And I'm just really keen to kind of dig into all of that and understand like what's influenced you, how you go about things, why you go about things. And that's the reason why I wanted to interview you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to do it with you as well. I think to answer your question, there's lots of ways to answer your question, because it's a mixture of so many things, like you just said, from, where I come from, where my parents come from, the environments I've been around, what I've lived through the 39 years of my life so far. But it really truly starts at home for me. I think it starts in those first, let's say, 10 years of your life. I think those years are so formative for any child. And I'm really, really fortunate that I had very special formative years as a kid that made me feel empowered and confident to believe in myself, and not necessarily believe in myself from a career standpoint because I was so little, but just believe in myself from a human standpoint and just be comfortable with who I am. When I was little, I knew that there was something different about me. I knew that I was attracted to playing with Barbies, or I was attracted to doing, to dancing, to performing, to singing, to dressing up, to being very expressive as a kid. And I have parents that always sort of pushed that more and made me feel like it was okay, where I could see around me maybe more bullying at school, or teachers that wouldn't understand, or maybe I wasn't the best academic student, but I was a good kid, that was always friendly with the teachers, or always wanted to get them in my pocket in a way, or become kind of friends with them rather than like having this teacher-student dynamic. And I think all of those things really kind of paved the way, or like set the tone to the way that I was going to grow up as a teenager and to the way that I started to grow up as an adult. And so I always kind of, whenever I get asked this type of question, I always kind of really give credit to my parents, but also give credit to the environment that my parents created around me and the friends that they had and the things that I was witnessing, the music that was listened to, the objects around my house, the everything kind of had so much to do with the way that I am as a person. And I think moving around so much, like being born in Colombia, then growing up in Miami, at a time when it was, I'm so lucky to have lived, and that my mom like sent me to live with my dad, which was, I think, a big sacrifice for her because I'm her only child. And so she knew that it was the right thing for me. I went to live in Miami for a year and I ended up staying because I was able to express myself so much more and be around things that really captured my eye and my emotions and made me flex my muscles, my creative muscles, so much more. And so then, from there to New York and from New York to Paris, and always having such a huge link to Colombia through my parents, through my dad, through just my love for my culture. And just the mixture of that at a young age just kind of gave me maybe an advantage point of being around a lot of things that other kids my age were not around. And that was also being at the right place at the right time and being around an environment that, I was born to parents that are bohemian, that are artists. I was born to parents into families that were social, that like to host, that like to have people, that like to, there was so much that I think that happened that has to do so much with why I have evolved the way that I have evolved as a person and in my career as well. But that also has brought a lot of, there's also downs to that, so there's a lot of things that have happened as well, which I'm happy to talk to you about them, that have not been easy and that have made it very challenging when you start so young. When I didn't go to college, for example. There's a lot of things that my life was, it was just different, that then you start to see how it affects you later on as in your adult life, or you question things, or you have ups, you have downs, and when you're so young, dealing with that is hard. So that's the first part of answering
No,
your
that was
question.
super helpful. And just for context, just so people know, your dad was a Colombian painter and your mum was a British jazz singer, right?
Right. So yes, yeah. So my dad is a Colombian painter and an amazing one. And my mom, I grew up with my mom being a jazz lounge singer. Then she changed after many years. She kind of changed her path into the spiritual world and meditation world and all of this more holistic world. And she has dedicated her life to those kinds of studies and those kinds of practices. So that's what she does now, which is also kind of amazing because it also brings a whole other layer of beauty into my life, because I have like this guardian angel on one side of my mom, like kind of always telling me what my astrology says, or what, or pushing me to meditate more, or like
So you were
expressing.
exposed to that at a very young, like at a really young age. You
Oh
knew
yeah.
about all this stuff and meditation, spirituality, and
Yeah, I went to
in
see the Dalai Lama with my mom when I was like a kid. I was always seeing my mom, doing meditations, or making music, and my dad painting beautiful women at home, and having, just that kind of environment. I was exposed to fashion at an early age, which is why I started. Like at first, I wanted to become an actor, a singer, a performer, a dancer. That's really what I wanted to do when I was very little. I was in musical theater. That's where my path was going. When I moved to Miami, I moved in the early 90s when there was this kind of renaissance to South Beach, Miami, of art scene, fashion scene, gay scene, kitsch, Cuban, Latin scene, supermodels, designers, celebrities, Madonna, Gianni Versace. I mean, there was all these amazing people that were coming into this beach town that at the time was like from First Street to 17th Street, on the beach in the most beautiful sort of Art Deco, tropical Art Deco setting. And I was this little kid growing up on the beach with an artist father, parent, handsome, that would attract, of course, these models or these people, or he would be sitting with so and so where we lived. We lived above a restaurant called the News Cafe, which was the place to be. So every time I would go downstairs to catch my school bus to take me to school, there would be like Gianni Versace sitting there, or like some photo shoot happening with a major photographer and like Claudia Schiffer or like Naomi Campbell. And I started to befriending a lot of these people as a kid, which then of course led to me starting my first, doing fashion shows in my school. When they announced talent shows, instead of doing some kind of performance, I would put together a fashion show and imitate what I was looking at in fashion TV or in the magazines. And then it led me to do my first show in New York when I was 18, and it led me to start, selling my collections since I was 18. I got a lot of attention very early on because of what happened, because of that special story. I became, the youngest designer to show in New York Fashion Week. And as in America, everything is always sort of amplified in the press, or makes everything's like about the news and about the new thing and da da da. So that's what happened at the time. I was on the Oprah Winfrey show. There was so many things that happened so quick between being 18 and 21. By the time I was 22 years old, I was hired as the creative director for Emmanuel Ungaro here in Paris, which is what moved me to Paris. And then everything else that has happened since. So that's a little bit a nutshell of my story, and what and how why we're here too, and why perhaps my story is interesting and can inspire other people that are listening.
Yeah, I mean, wow, those times in the early days, just hearing you talking about it, I mean, must must have been super exciting. I mean, I lived in Miami for a little bit in 2016, as you know, but back in those days, I mean, wow, and just being at the heart of it, and all that artistic, flair going on, and the hedonism, particularly for a young guy like you, must have been absolutely crazy. I do think it's particularly interesting, and this is to my intuition around wanting to get you on. I think it's fascinating talking to someone that has embodied these from your mum's side, for example, obviously with your dad, with the creativity and liberal and being an artist, but on your mum's side, which I didn't know so much about, with obviously the philosophy and the spirituality and the mindfulness and the meditation, you kind of being exposed to that from a really young age. So many of us in the West are just figuring out about this stuff now, through necessity, or trying to solve issues that we've created because of the modern world that we live in. And how has that been, and how have you been able to like utilize that and lean on that as you've gone through? And did you realize when you were back in the early days in Miami and America and having that success, did you utilize any of that stuff? Was it there subconsciously, or it kind of you realized what you had later on?
I think it was more there subconsciously. In fact, it's still there a little bit subconsciously sometimes. I wish, I think that there was a bit of a rebel in me during my growing up regarding that subject with my mom. I feel like she would push me to do certain things or want me to be a part of certain things, and I was very kind of rebellious about it. And not because I didn't want to, I just was being kind of like a rebel teenager, like I think we all have been at some point. And I think anything that your parents tell you that they want you to do, you're like, no. But it was always there. And I always felt a certain sense of protection. And I always found my own way to meditate or to contemplate, or I find contemplation one of the most amazing ways to meditate, to just sit and stare quietly at nature or at something beautiful. That already is something that you can do for yourself, or quiet time, or there's many ways that we can all find a moment to disconnect, or find a certain peace within us if we need to. But I'm very fortunate that I had that base, or someone, every time I speak to my mom, I always feel better after, because she has a way of kind of running through whatever issues that are going on in my life in a very powerful way. Or the same with my dad. My dad is not like my dad wakes up and meditates every day, but my dad wakes up in front of the sea and he contemplates his nature and he wakes up calm. I just learned a lot of human values from both of them, about being present in the moment, about the future is the past of yesterday. That's what my dad always says, for example, so always having that perspective that we're always looking about what we're going to do, what we're going to do, what we're going to do. And we don't realize that we don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow. And we have to be present now. And it's one of the hardest, I think, exercises for all of us as humans to do, because we are so pressured about all the noise that is happening around us. And it's very easy to have these conversations, but after to exercise these types of things is much harder.
Yeah,
So
I
there is a
could.
certain base that I have been instilled by my parents that I think has helped me a lot.
I think that's so interesting because without even going into it too deeply, just you knowing and understanding about that realm, and even like what presence is, and being able to sort of deliberately put your attention here instead of there, and those things probably already put you at a massive advantage without even realizing it. And I couldn't agree more with what you just said at the end there around these ideas that are kind of everywhere at the moment about trying to be more present and gratitude. Like, almost they've been kind of badly branded now, or a little bit too airy fairy. And
Yeah.
when they're used in those kind of contexts, oh, we got to be more present, or we got to practice more gratitude. It's almost like it needs to be rebranded in a different way, because it is so hard to do properly, and it is so important. And I think spoken about in the right context is really important for people to kind of relate to. And yeah, it's easier said than done.
But for me, it's easier said than done. But the way to do it for me is not necessarily to wake up every morning and have a moment of gratitude. It's about a lifestyle. It's about having a smile on your face. It's about being kind to people. It's about being open to whatever comes. It's about surrendering when things are not working out the way you want them to be. Just surrender and kind of let things flow a little bit and not feel like you have to control everything all the time. And again, easier said than done, but I always try to live my life like that. Even when things are hard, I am enjoying myself. And I think that's also a way of being grateful, of not trying to not take things as seriously. I mean, we all get in our heads. And in fact, right now, I'm starting a new chapter work wise that makes me be in my head all the time and overthink things. And I need to step back a lot and kind of regroup. And I have my certain ways where I need to kind of stop, do some breathing. I try to exercise some things. I think you have to push yourself to do that, but it's not the only way. I think it's really a general way of life and a lifestyle that can make you truly feel grateful at all times in your day, and not just this moment of I'm grateful for being alive, or I'm grateful. It's about your attitude that makes you, I think, feel grateful for being alive, or feel grateful for today, or whatever you need to be grateful for, so that's the way I try to do that. But like you said, it's easier said than done sometimes, and we're human, and sometimes we can dig ourselves into a hole, and it's normal. It happens, and it's also part of the process. You can't know light without knowing dark. Like, it's like you have to understand both in order to be able to see both.
Yeah, you got to know
So
rough to know smooth, right?
yeah, of course.
And do you find that, throughout your life, and let's say over the last decade, for example, and I know there've been some ups and downs, but are you drawing on all the sort of stuff that you were just influenced by and learned during your upbringing and surrounded by these people? Or have you continued to be curious and learn about, new ways of thinking and philosophies and, reading and thought leaders? And where are you on that?
Oh no, of course. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a mixture of both. I obviously constantly, and it's in fact the new project that I'm working on. I'm gonna launch a new brand called Donde Esteban, and it's really linked to my roots and my culture and my upbringing and my family and my friends and my collaborators, and something very personal. Donde Esteban is like at Esteban's, or Che Esteban, or Da Esteban, like in different languages. It's like going to the person's house or personal space. So it's like when you see that in Paris, even in restaurants where it's very family oriented. And I think where I'm going with this is that I wanted to do something that felt very personal and get inspired by my own story and by my own upbringing, and not necessarily always be looking at things externally. And at the same time, take the things that I am, inspired by every day, or the curiosities I have from whether it's reading something, whether it's watching something, looking at something, enjoying, a moment in time, something that I look at, something I experience, whatever it is, I implement that into something that feels personal. That's my process in creativity. I like things to feel like they are, I have such a rich life of culture, of things that I have been exposed to, that I want to put that into the work rather than always feeling like I have to look externally for inspiration. I let that happen naturally.
I mean, that's so intriguing. Congratulations on the new
Thank
brand, by the way. That sounds
you.
exciting. Is that going to be running in parallel with the previous brand, Esteban Cortazar, or is it sort of going to be an evolution now and you'll only
It's
be
an
focusing on the
evolution.
new
It's a
one?
new project. It's a new chapter. It's linked because it's obviously me, but it's not in the same direction. It's not as like high end. It's a bit more welcoming than what I was doing before. What I was doing before with Esteban Cortazar will sort of stay as a sleeping beauty for now, and then hopefully in the future I can kind of rehash something there, which I would love. And that was
Why
a big
did
step.
you, was there any particular reason why, because you've had a lot of success with that brand and Paris Fashion Week, etc., and dressing a lot of celebrities. Why has that been discontinued if there was a lot of success there? Is it more of a sort of personal purpose and you wanting to embody more of of who you are and that congruency that you just spoke about, or were there other reasons why it's been discontinued?
No, I'll be super transparent. It's several reasons. One, let's start with the first reason being that there was a lot of success. There was a lot of amazing things that happened throughout the time I had the brand. Like you said, I dressed probably every celebrity that we can think of. I was showing in Paris Fashion Week. I was in all the press and magazines, but I didn't have the right infrastructure of support backstage of all of that. And for many reasons, and the whole podcast can become about this if I get into it, but it's more about, I didn't feel necessarily supported. I had investment, I had a lot of great things, but like fashion, sometimes fashion is a bit of an illusion. Success is measured by perception and by what you're looking at. So if you are seeing me dress Kate Blanchett and Beyonce and are walking the runway of Paris Fashion Week, oh, Esteban is so successful. But behind that, maybe the numbers are not being handled the right way. Maybe, the sales are suffering, but yet there's all this wowness around image, but then sales are suffering because for whatever reason, it's not working in some of the stores. A lot of things like that happened, and a lot of things like that happen every day to designers. Unfortunately, it's a very tough business that is very much based on perception, and you are wanting this validation from the industry. And once you get the validation from the industry, you think that that's what you need. But in fact, what you really need is to make sure you're connected to your customer, is make sure that you know who your customer is. And so that's one of the things that I have really matured about. There's a lot of things in fashion that don't impress me anymore because I started so young. So I'm not really after all of that anymore. I want to do my own thing, my own way, and do it right and grow in different ways.
You're not as affected by it, for example.
No, I'm not as affected. I did it, and it's been amazing. I did all of that, and I'll do it in other ways now that I'm starting this new project. But and another reason, aside from the, let's say, more financial difficulties that we had, and then COVID arrived. I mean, there's a lot of factors, right? Like all of this was happening, and then boom, COVID arrives, and the world shuts down. And for me, it was almost like, instead of saying like, no, 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 we're gonna push through, we're gonna make this work, I was like, you know what? This is a sign that I need to just stop and regroup and focus on special projects, which is what I did in these past 4 years, doing New York City Ballet, Miami City Ballet, different collaborations that were very artistic, traveling around the world, doing different things. And the other thing that also made me kind of inclined to stop was that I was having a really hard time with the snobby world of fashion, the constant feeling of wanting to belong, and the constant feeling of wanting to be accepted by the fashion industry. That is a very fickle industry, that one day you're in, the next day you can be out. If you are successful, everybody's all over you. If you are struggling, all of a sudden people, walk away. That's like that in probably every industry, but in any entertainment and artistic industry, it's very much like that. And it goes in such a fast pace that sometimes it's just hard to keep up. And I have been doing it for so long that it just made me tired. I was tired. I was like, I need to take a break. This is not that important to me. I was like, I'm not saving lives. My main importance is my sanity, my family, I went through also, my dad got really sick. I don't know if I ever told you this, but my dad got really, really sick. He almost died. And that was a huge wake up call. And he's doing amazing now. But I went through all of this these past years. And I was so thankful during the almost year that my dad was ill that I didn't have all of that to worry about. I was able to stay in Cartagena with my dad and dedicate myself 6 months to my dad to make him get better again. And he did. If I would have had all of that stuff happening at that time, it would have been extremely difficult for me to be able to be in both places at the same time. And I would have had to make very hard choices regardless. Everything just kind of happens for a reason. Like life sometimes shows you different signs and you have to pay attention to them because it's the way that the events happen that I was really kind of moved about. I was like, wow, like I was in such a dark place when I had to make a decision to stop the brand going, even though I was like, everything's going to be fine. Da, da, da. Of course, it was hard for me. It's hard for me to stop doing shows. It was hard for me to stop doing things that I love doing creatively, but that cost a lot of money. And I was like, I'm not going to put myself in that situation anymore.
And I suppose even though now you're talking about it with so much clarity retrospectively, and it makes sense to you, because I can feel you're speaking from the heart, I can imagine at the time, it must have been so hard to close that door on because a lot of your identity was wrapped up in that status and that brand, and that's what you were doing, and that validated you as a person, right? So just talk to me about that. A, am I right, my observation, and B, how hard was that, and how did you deal with that and go through that process, and how long did it even take you to figure it all out?
It was little by little. You know what? I was fine, to be honest. Now that I look at it, I was super fine. I had my best friend here during COVID, and we were both like in the during the lockdowns, which was when all of this was happening. And I was happy to take that break. I was happy to be with him and just have our moment and be good. Then I was happy to like go to Colombia, stay with some time with my family. I went to Miami and I spent some time there. And I started just doing projects and kept on going. Just kept on going, It's not the first time it's happened to me too. I've gone through other ups and downs. I started when I was 18, So like, of course, I had my first financial backer when I was 17 years old. And then he like disappeared all of a sudden and I never saw him again. And this was when I was only 19 years old, I've gone through different chapters that have made me a strong person to deal with things. It's when I say to some people, like, it's not my first time in the rodeo. Like, I'm not impressed by this, or I'm not, gonna die over this. Like, it's fine, And that's the attitude. And that's what I was saying to you before about the gratitude part. It's like being just conscious that whatever seems like it's so bad today will not really feel like that in 6 months. And that's the thing that you gotta realize. Sometimes people stay stuck into a problem as if it's gonna be like that forever. And it doesn't. Things evolve, things change, something new comes in. If you separate from a partner, then maybe you get another partner.
I guess you've got the benefit of data points going through history, and having so many situations and growths and learnings that you you are able to look back on it and know, okay, things don't have to be that bad. Things will change, things will grow. Let the passage of time help me figure these things out. So do you think that that's been a big help to you?
Of course, it's a huge advantage because I have the, like you said, the data to know, or just the experience itself, the physical, mental, and emotional experience to go through things like that. But always having parents to back you and to be there for you, friends that are unconditional, settings. I mean, again, it's just being really fortunate, like being able to just, say, you know what, I'm going to go to Colombia and spend time with my parents. I mean, that was a big thing for me. That was medicine for me, and having that is a huge fortune because I know not everybody has those types of things to lay back on, or just have them in general,
Yeah, or
sometimes.
be able to take that time out to regroup, for example. And I think, so many people go through life and things have been very premeditated to an extent, or certain. And, there's a lot of this happens, this happens, this happens, and this happens. And there is never that much sort of fluidity or uncertainty or big issues or things that happen. And then at some point, things go pop and something does happen, and they haven't had the experience or data points in the past of knowing how to maybe navigate some of this stuff. And to our point earlier, may not have been brought up in an environment or exposed to some of those things to help guide them and help manage their mind and their stress levels and their perspectives, and how to navigate through it. And so I think it's definitely a thing. And I'm sure you're like me. You've got lots of friends in their 30s or 40s who something does happen or something has happened, and it is hard, and it does hit them hard, and a lot of people don't have the experience to draw on or the faith to draw on. And I think that's why there is such a big interest now in people getting into all sorts of things that we're talking about now.
I grew up with my father, for him and as an advice to me, always saying to never let anything get in the way of my freedom or his freedom, no matter what. That's hard sometimes because you have to make decisions that tie you to things or commit to things or whatever. And he's the biggest one of that doesn't commit to anything. And he's always lived this style of life. And that's the way he lived. He's 75 years old, has been a painter, artist all of his life. When he had money, he had money. When he didn't, he didn't. And he always has lived like a king somehow, because that's the way he is. That's the way he finds of figuring it out. That's been a huge inspiration for me to witness that all my life. And I always fall back on that, no matter what happens. Like, my freedom comes before anything else. And then my mom, on the other hand, would always be telling me, don't let anything or anyone ever take your happiness away or your smile away, or just don't allow that. If that starts to happen, it's not good. So I pay attention to things like that. And I'm not the best at putting boundaries in certain ways. In fact, I'm a very yes person. I have a hard time, or have had a hard time, saying no in the past, because I'm kind and I like to be nice. I like to please people. I like people to be happy around me. And that's also something that has come and bite me in the ass many times. But, I find a balance of it. But those things do help me because I think about them very often. Like those little voices that tell me to, hey, pay attention to that, or be careful with that, or don't allow that. Having that as a root is so powerful.
Hi guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. I just want to take 30 seconds to tell you a bit about my personal development company, Phoenix Mind. It's cliche, but years ago I had my own crisis moment which led me down a path of self-discovery, where I obsessed about all things wellness, psychology, philosophy, and spirituality. It took me 5 years, it was a total minefield, but in the end the renewed clarity, direction, and peace totally transformed my life. But here's the thing. I was starting to notice more and more in the people around me the very traits and challenges that I was overcoming within myself. But I knew that most of them were never going to get into this stuff because it all sounds far too mumbo jumbo, especially a lot of my British mates. They're more likely to say, pipe down, Charlie, and have another half shandy. So I became like an investigative journalist, determined to demystify the mumbo jumbo and distill the very best bits from what I'd experienced firsthand to help save you time, money, cut through the BS, and understand how to really make change and create a better life. You can check out what I'm doing at charlielaw.com. My book Mumbo Jumbo, The 7 Steps to Making Change Happen, is due to be published later this year. And I've also curated a one-stop shop crash course self-development program called Beyond Mumbo Jumbo. We have a limited number of mastermind cohorts for driven business leaders and entrepreneurs who are looking for that accountability, camaraderie, and mentorship. Change your environment, change your life. Thank you so much.
And I guess as a creative person as well, there's so much value in being able to feel liberated and free to be able to tap into your creative powers and expression. Because if you don't feel, well, if you feel the opposite to those things, I guess you're not going to be able to be your best self and do your best work. But what I'm interested in is that at the beginning of the conversation, you pointed to the advantages and disadvantages of having that expression and freedom and empowerment when you were younger, which has a lot of advantages. But what are some of the downsides to it?
I mean, it's like when you look at any child star that was exposed to fame very early on, and then they get into drugs, they get into bad habits, or they're surrounded by people that are not really helping, or they grow up and they don't have the same amount of big success, and then they get depressed. I didn't go through all of that. I mean, I started clubbing when I was 14, but I didn't get into drugs or even started drinking until I was 21. I was interested in the environment more than that part of it. And I was always very protected by people, which I noticed now. And even a lot of my friends that were already older then, because I was always hanging around with older people, are still my friends now. But when you're exposed like that and you're being criticized at such a young age, like I was getting reviews for my show in the New York Times or in Women's Wear Daily when I was 18, starting when I was 18. So one of the things that I learned a lot is like not everyone's going to like what you do. Not everyone's going to praise you. Not everyone's going to like you. And I learned that early on. And I think that was a big thing, because I don't get as affected anymore of like if somebody doesn't like a collection or things like that. But I think the down stuff is really that you don't have experience when you're so young to deal with a lot of these things, and you kind of navigate it as you go. And when you have Bohemian artist parents, they also have that very freestyle, free spirit way of being. So they're not necessarily being like, okay, what's going on? But it all happened the way it needed to happen. And I think I wouldn't say there's a lot of down parts. It's just that the feeling like you have to stand up to the plate at all times from such an early age is definitely hard and scary sometimes. And then you start thinking like, is it bad that I didn't go to college? Like, should I have had that moment in time? But my college has been life and experience in doing what I love doing. And that's how I've learned my craft, my skills, my things like that. But, and then somebody that went to college, maybe to the best college, maybe says, I don't know if that was that formative for me. My formative years have actually come after that or before that. But I love all the people that I met during those 4 years of college because I created a network. I created mine in a different way. But, you start questioning because it's not normal the way that I grew up. So then you are an adult, I'm almost 40, and you start to question like all of these years, like how they have evolved and why I've had the struggles I've had or why I have had the ups and downs. And sometimes I kind of say, well, maybe because I was inexperienced at that time for this, or even now there's certain things that I still don't know, or maybe I'm not good with numbers and I'm not good with certain things that just don't come natural to me. And then you try to navigate towards that, just kind of keep it going, But like those are, I would say, some of the, just like dealing with partners and dealing with like things like that at such a young age is it's not easy. When I think about it now, I say like, wow, that's a lot for a teenager to deal with. So I think a lot about child actors and singers that sometimes don't evolve the way that they should, because it's you get sucked into a
Yeah, I
world
mean
that you're
that's
not
just
ready for.
not. I mean, yeah, that's just not normal, isn't it? You've only ever experienced a world that revolves around you, and you haven't experienced what normality is. I mean, no wonder a lot of those guys and girls suffer. But
And
I,
you
but
see stories that really change or that evolve, like a Drew Barrymore story, which is, I'm not comparing myself to Drew Barrymore, but it is incredible. She started, as a little kid. She was in Studio 54 when she was like 13, 12, or whatever, 11 years old. That it could have really gone a different direction. And this girl like really changed her life and is the movie star and incredible woman that she is, Drew Barrymore. And I feel like that's always an inspiration to me, because I relate a lot to these stories, because I was also that kid, in the clubs at a really early age. And had I not had those formative years that I talked about at the beginning, I probably would have gotten into a lot of bad things. And maybe I would not be here today, because I was exposed to a lot of things that a normal kid would not be exposed to. And it wasn't something that made me feel bad or made me go into anything dark. There was always a sense of protection, and I'm very grateful to that.
well, that's
So
massive testament to your parents, I think, enabling you to have the presence of mind to be able to know your values and be able to navigate that, but be able to be in it and enjoy it at the same time, right? I think one of the most interesting things that you've touched on and links very closely to a major interest of mine is this idea of, or the concept of upbringing and our influence of our parents and schools and environment when we're younger. And I always like to talk about, a very wide spectrum. You could have very, very liberal parents who let you do whatever you want, and the opposite to your very strict conservative parents that want you to be a certain way and do things a certain way, and etc. And I think we all grow up and are influenced by that, and often get to a certain stage in life where you look back and realize how you've been shaped and influenced, and you have questions about why and how and what if. But I think there are always advantages and disadvantages to everything. There are always upsides and downsides to everything, which I think is the key message. There's no ideal or perfect way. It's just, I think one of the most important things is to be able to recognize where we've come from, and that for the most part, our parents and the people around us have loved us and wanted the best for us with the knowledge that they've had. And if there have been things that we've been influenced and exposed to at an early age that have influenced us and had an impact on our personality, and we want to change some of those things, or they might not have been serving us, or they might have been holding us back, then we can change those things. But there doesn't need to be any animosity or resentment. We can take ownership and accountability and responsibility for our own self and our own beliefs and values, and we can sort of iterate around those things to almost sculpt the ideal version of oneself, and that can continue to change. So it's something that I definitely think about a lot, and I do think is interesting, and I think can be mismanaged sometimes. Once you get to that deeper sense of self, and you're more aligned with who you really are and what you really want and what you're really about, it helps inform much better decisions. There's a rudder there that is guiding you towards what does feel purposeful and congruent with who you are and the decisions that you make. And back to your story, I'm guessing you've always had that expression and creativity and sense of self, and so making those decisions along the way, you've had that sensitivity almost to kind of to guide you.
And I was very mature for my age, but I was still not mature to and experienced to still tackle some of the things that were thrown at me because of being so driven and expressive and going for it. There are certain things that simply just come with age and experience. And this is going back the same thing. Like if you start so young and are exposed to so many things so young, it's bound to happen that there's going to be things that don't go as planned because you're not experienced enough to handle them. And that's okay. But it's just part of the process of if you go through it like that, that's what happens, that's what happens. I also didn't have, it's not like I had like, a mom manager or a dad manager that was like being like, no, it wasn't like that. It was so spontaneous and freestyle and good and everything's great. And again, thankfully, nothing bad happened, but I did go through experiences that made me be more secure of who I am today and understand more who am I, and what I like. And I keep learning every day and I keep evolving every day, as we all do. And, who knows what will be the next 10 years? I don't know. I'm excited for it and see what happens. But I learn through all of these experiences and not make the same mistakes again, or just kind of truly evolve. And I think, again, that happens with age and experience. I think when you're in your 40s, you navigate towards things very differently than in your 30s and your 20s. And that's just life, no matter what you're exposed to, no matter what you're living, no matter how successful you are, you question a lot more, especially in the world we're living in today. I always wonder, like, what all of these people that are so exposed in social media, that are so famous, that are doing, that are young, that are so young and that are doing all of these things, like, how are they going to feel when they're 45, when they're 50, like, where's the world going in that way, because everything is such an illusion nowadays. Everything is.
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it? And everyone's thinking so short term about everything. And yeah, I totally agree with you. And a lot of these young kids as well, who are just, consuming the content, not just the creators. I think it is pretty scary. But going back to your story in your next chapter, Esteban, and I love it how, you're basically saying, you know yourself better, and the next chapter around your career and your brand is going to be a lot more aligned with who you are, etc., and going back to that expression. But how are you thinking about the commercial side of things? And, you're this creative guy and you became a bit unstuck previously with the back office stuff and the numbers stuff and the sound business sense. How strategically are you also thinking about the go forward, the next chapter? Like, are you thinking super long term? Are you working with like complementary business partners? Like, how do you think about it from a more strategic commercial sense when you're, I suppose, in the infancy of your new chapter and your new kind of career project?
Well, I think I'm very excited because I do have new partners that feel very different to what I've had before, because it's not just about a financial partner. It's about a partner that's going to really get their hands dirty with you and go fully into it. And I think that, again, it has to do with my experience up to this point and what I've been able to do and the name I've been able to create that attracted me to this. So there is a lot of more of a commercial hat on in this new project. And I feel much more supported 360 to be able to make this into the success that it deserves. That was a big thing for me. I've been working on this for several years now as a concept, and I was waiting for the right way of doing it. I think I found it. So let's see.
I think it's amazing. I mean, I would never have thought in my early 20s, being 39, 40, same age as you. I think we hadn't pressed record yet on this when we were chatting about it briefly at the beginning. We're both about to turn 40 this year. And certainly for me, I mean, considering being 40 this year definitely does things to me inside and really makes one think about, like, shit, we really are middle age and halfway point possibly, and it really makes you kind of think about things a lot. I don't know if that's the case for you.
Yeah, of course it is. In my case, it makes me think about it a lot because I started my career so young. And so to kind of see that I already have kind of like 20 years under my belt doing what I do, and I'm about to be 40, it's just interesting the way that, the way I kind of see my way of thinking about, what my dreams are, or like reshuffling what I want, or kind of understanding from a more mature point of view, what I want my present and future to look like as I navigate new chapters of my life. And so, yeah, of course. I mean, I guess everybody goes through that. But for me, it's just kind of like, I guess we all question, like, are we where we want to be when we're turning 40, right? But I feel like 40 is the new 30. So
I couldn't agree
everyone
more.
kind of says that. I feel like there's a youthfulness in general now that maybe there wasn't so much of before. I feel like people are, I don't know, I think that people like operate differently. And 40 is super young, at the end of the day. I think 40, you know who you are, you know what you like, what you don't like, you filter out more the bullshit. I think that's really exciting. So I don't have an issue with like getting older. It's not from a vanity point of view, as many people sometimes have that. For me, it's more about like I'm excited to go through a chapter of like knowing who I am more, being more decisive, having more of like a really clear north for me.
In very different ways, we've got similar stories where we're both, starting new things and wanting to do it, the right way, and setting ourselves up for increasing the chances and probabilities of success. And it's just crazy to think at the ripe old age of 40, what one's almost starting again. Okay, there's a wealth of knowledge and experience and know-how to draw on. But I think it's just cool for people to hear it and know that that's the evolution of life, really, isn't it? I mean, a lot of
I like to
people
keep things
are.
moving. I like to
Yeah.
keep things moving, I love to, I was talking about it with a friend last night for dinner. It's like when I was going through the struggle right before COVID with the business, I was, having a hard time, but I was also like, okay, what do I want to do now? How am I going to stay afloat? How is it all going to work? And all these things started coming my way. All these great projects started coming my way. And it all worked out, And then I was able to spend time on working on this project little by little. Then I got the right partners to launch it. Trust, trust the process. I think it's super important to just trust the process, not get into this spiral, which we do. I do too. I mean, I do it too. In fact, I do it all the time now because of it's a new business. So of course I think about things so much, and the times are short and things are late. And so you start to start to overthink about what to do to resolve things, but you got to trust the process. That has been a big lesson for me too, to just surrender, trust the process, know that everything's going to be okay. What seems like a big deal today won't seem like a big deal tomorrow. Um, and that truly has helped me in this new chapter of my life. Part of me, of course, like there's it's a new chapter, so I'm a bit scared. I wanted to do great. Da da da. I have a lot of pressure on me right now. Maybe it's not the type of pressure I would like to have as I'm turning 40. Maybe I would love to be in a point where, all of these 20 years are already seeing all these fruits and things are just flowing. I'm starting a new chapter at this stage of my life. So this is a bit scary, but it's super exciting too. And it's about reinventing yourself and not getting stuck into what was, but what can be, what is, continuing on. And also my life entails way more than just fashion. So that's also why this project is this project, because this project is about like lifestyle, more than just fashion. I don't want to do things for the sake of fashion anymore. It's not what interests me. I would love to perform in the future. Maybe I would love to do, I don't know. I would love to do different types of things in the creative world. And that's why I'm setting this up in a way where it's open for many things.
But to begin with, the brand, it is a clothing brand, but it's more of a commercial clothing brand. Like, what's the plan?
It is a more commercial clothing, resort oriented brand, inspired by my Colombian roots, Ibiza, Miami, all the places where I've lived all my life or grew up going to. My love for the and never ending summer, the beach. I'm working with my dad for all the prints, of the pieces through all his art. I also want to kind of create the grounds for my dad's legacy. The day that he goes, I want to kind of continue that as well. So, you know, it's is a very personal project.
And so will this sort of be something, it's kind of direct to consumer online shopping, or will we see you in the fashion shows, or like how does it evolve in terms of the product?
It's gonna be more online. It's gonna be more online, more digital, very directed to certain markets. No fashion shows at the beginning, at least. Pop-ups, working with different hotels around the world in resort settings. You know, a lot of big links to Miami, LA, hot places. That's the vibe.
It's got Esteban written all over it. I can
All over it.
I can feel it. It's exciting, and I'm sure you'll do really well. And it is exciting. I mean, so many of us grow up and think that life is linear, and you'll just be at 40 and have everything sorted out and have all these investments and savings and bought all these things that and this life that we expected, but I know so many people who are starting again or starting something new or not where they thought they'd be, and there have been situations that they've learned from or have ended up not how they expected. But I agree with you. I think it's super exciting being at this stage and that pressure and that excitement and the little bit of anxiety that shit, if this doesn't work, but going for it and drawing on that wealth of knowledge and experience and data points from before and kind of backing yourself, right? That's what's exciting.
It's also hard when you put yourself out there like this, right? Because it's not just like you're trying something, and like when you put your name on something, when you put of course it's scary, because when you think like, oh, well, if this doesn't work, well, it sucks to think sometimes like that, because it's like this pressure of putting yourself out there and you got to make it work. But if it doesn't work, things continue to evolve no matter what, And so that's, I think, what I've learned is really that. Do I want it to work, and am I going to make it work? Yeah. But there's always that possibility of, whatever. And then life will take me in a direction that it needs to take me if that happens. I need to feel that way in order to be able to make it work. I don't want to put so much pressure on myself like that. I just want to be me, do it, and make it happen and make it work. But know that I don't have control of everything, Yeah. I won't have control of everything. So
having the whereabouts and the experience and the knowledge and the mindset that you've got, it just helps. It feels like it just helps a lot to equip you with the journey you're about to go on. Because if you didn't know any of that stuff, it would be like 10 times harder. At least it's like knowing is power, right? You know what you're getting into. But I think it sounds like you know what you're getting into in terms of it might fail and there's a lot of uncertainty and things are very fluid. And
yeah, it's what it is when you're an entrepreneur and when you work for yourself, when you want to have that freedom that my dad has always told me about. Because I don't want to go work for some people that I don't have that control. I want to have my own control, and that comes with struggles, and that comes with ups, and it comes with downs. And that's the price you pay. That's the risk you pay for being able to, be my own boss and have my vision and have people that are working for me to execute that vision. That's what I want, at the end, so that I can grow it into a lot of different things that I would like to do in the future. And I like that. I like being linked to places that I want to travel to. I want to be able to include my freedom into the project and into the process and into, the day-to-day of it. being able to have control of it is important for me. So let's see what happens.
No, I love it. And maybe you don't even realize the extent that you saying these things can be incredibly inspiring to people listening to it, because I think so many people out there think they must have everything figured out, or, oh shit, I've got family and kids now, I'm 40, I better just go and get the safe job. But listening to you talking about going for it and trusting yourself and following your heart, and having no regrets, really. I think it is inspiring, and it's important for people to hear a lot of the time, because life has all sorts of different forks in the road, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel fortunate. It's the road that's been paved that makes me feel that way now, It's not always easy, but I do the best for it.
Yeah. Well, it's very exciting, and I'm going to look forward to seeing how it all develops, and I'm sure it's going to be a huge success, Esteban.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you so much. I think so too. I feel it in my heart, and I think yeah, I'm super excited for it. I can't wait for you to see it.
What are you most scared about going forward?
I don't know, actually. I mean, I'm trying not to be focused on the fears, but I guess I'm just scared of putting myself out there again, like now, like just kind of like, just like saying, here I am again with something. I feel like that is a bit scary, but it's also a good scary.
But how do you navigate? How do you navigate that in your mind? Is it feel the fear and do it anyway? Do you know that that's where you should be leaning into, and that's good, or how do you think about that?
I just go with the flow. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? And then other times I'm just like, it's so exciting, just depends on the day and how I'm feeling and what's going on. When something that's not good is happening, or there's a delay, or there's moments of tension with the teams or with the partners or whatever, of course, there's this thing where you're like, ugh, but it's part of it. I don't really focus on so much of what I'm afraid of as much. That's why I don't, I think that would be the thing that I would say. Other than that, no, I'm not afraid of it. I have done it before. I'm afraid of not feeling like like of what I was telling you regarding my freedom and things, but I have control of that. So of course there's compromises, but it's still under my doing. So
do you ever think about what the industry are going to say, and why isn't Esteban doing that anymore, and what happened, and why is he stopped, and why is he doing this now? It's
going to happen. It's going to happen, but I don't know. Like, I can't control people's minds and what they think, or what they'll write, or what they'll perceive, or if they like, if they don't. That is not my problem, and I'm not going to make it be my problem. Like that will happen anyways. I will concentrate on those that are pushing it, believing in it, rooting for it, not those that maybe are not going to get it or question or say, oh, whatever, because that will happen anyways. It's what happens when you put yourself out there in the public eye. When you want markets around the world to like what you are putting out there, I mean, that is what you have to deal with. So
of course, and I think something that helps a lot when it comes to that kind of thing is looking inward and thinking about, hang on, how have I got here, and reminding oneself around the why and the conviction and the real reason you're doing it, and know how aligned it is with you and your future, and whether why you're doing it for yourself and other people, and the value there, and I think that's all you need to tell yourself that you're doing the right thing.
Exactly. That's the, like I said, it starts at the root. That's the most important.
I think this has been a super interesting conversation, and I love it how we kind of done what I was hoping. You're someone that there wasn't one big event or one big thing that sparked a seismic change in your life. You're someone from an early age who is exposed and influenced by all sorts of different cultures and influence and things and ways, that you're a sort of an embodiment of all of those things, and a lot of the things that a lot of us are coming to learn about sort of later on in life. And it's about growth and growing up and learning and and changing and evolving. And it's the change, it's the slower change through the passage of time. And I think that, you know, particularly from such an early age and exposed through all the fame and hedonism and success that you were, and different countries and cultures, I think it's just really interesting for me to hear, and for the audience as well, to see how you think about things and how fluid things can be, and the different things that you draw on. So, you know, thanks a lot, buddy, and good luck going forward. And I'm excited to see new things.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you. This has been super nice for me as well, especially with you. And I know we were trying to do it for a while, and I'm happy to do it anytime. And yeah, thank you. And I hope that the listeners enjoyed it.
If you enjoyed the episode, please share the love and give us a cheeky follow, rating, like, or review. It really does make a massive difference. Don't be shy either to share any of your favorites on social media. This is a truly mission-driven project with the aim of helping to motivate, inspire, and give hope to as many people as possible that change, a better life, a new dawn is all possible. I genuinely love hearing from you and actively try to constantly improve things and bring guests on to address any specific themes. As always, you'll find resources and links from the episode in the show notes. You can follow me on all social media platforms as well as YouTube. And don't forget to check out my website, charleylaw.com. Until next time.